What's going on, everybody? Whether you're practicing social distancing of 6 feet up to 6 miles, you can still party with On and Off the Field, where you can listen to the best NFL and charity-based podcasts out there on the RTF Sports Network. You can follow them on Facebook or go to rtfsportsnetwork.com and check out the show Thursdays from 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. What's up, y'all? You know who it is. It's your boy Dylan from On and Off the Field with Durf and Dylan. So I'm just coming to let you know, on the RTF Sports Network, this show will now be live from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays. If you go to rtfsportsnetwork.com, you can listen to the show live from there and on our social media platforms on Facebook and Instagram. It's going to be an amazing show that is all about the fans. Also, when you go to rtfsportsnetwork.com, make sure to vote for On and Off the Field as the show of the month for April. If we win that, money is going to charity. You can count on that.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to RTFSportsNetwork.com here on the 8 o'clock hour. Coming at you right now, you have Cole Johnson and On the Daily. Enjoy.
The Last Dance reminds us of lasting impressions. Cole Sports presents On the Daily.
Welcome to Cole Sports. You have entered the zone called sports on another level. And now, here's your host, Cole Johnson.
Thank you so much, Spike. As always, I love you to pieces. Cole Johnson here. Cole Sports presents On the Daily. Is on tap and on the mic. And we're going to get right down to it. We're going to bypass. Normally on Mondays, we have rapid fire. It's going to return soon, but we have to come up with something else. Topic of the day, please. So, of course, the big-time news, NBA-wise, is sort of twofold. This Saturday should have started, this past Saturday, should have started the 2020 or 2020 playoff season. We should have already seen all the first round games played, all 8 of them played, all of game 1 of the first round played by now. Normally you have 4 on Saturday and 4 on Sunday. You didn't see that. Why? Well, of course, because of COVID-19. So in an effort to, I guess at least maybe circumvent that, ESPN, which I believe they did do this, partnered with the NBA, and they decided, well, let's air this documentary that we've had and we've hyped for over a year now about the 1998 Bulls. You know, we were going to air it after the NBA playoffs, so it was going to be probably in the second half of June, and it was going to last all the way until Labor Day. Why don't we bump that up and actually condense it as well? Instead of having it 1 hour episodes every Sunday for 10 weeks, why don't we have 2 episodes every week for the next 5? It would still give people somewhat of a playoff fervor and taste and fever. So all of that is good. And the series thus far is good. That's not the issue I have, and that's not the problem. The problem I'm having is I'm sensing that since we're done with the playoffs, we do have the last hurrah called The Last Dance, the remembrance of the last great dynasty. Yes, I know, Warriors fan, I'm sorry. It is not as glorious. Your run is not as glorious as the Bulls' run. 6 championships in 8 years. And there was another dynasty after it in the 2000s Lakers. But it wasn't quite as glorious as the Bulls, and neither has your run been. No slight, that's just truth, in fact. So here we are, we have this snapshot of the last year of the last dynasty we have seen that doesn't include the New England Patriots, but the last dynasty of teams that actually has won at least 3 championships in such a close cluster because they did it twice. To see that ending is going to be interesting, and it was interesting in the I guess you could say the pregame, the prelude to it all. And we all heard the stories, right? So all of that was great, but I almost get the feeling that this was supposed to be a bit of a smokescreen. Well, why do I say that? Well, news came out this past weekend that the NBA, as quiet as it's kept, is going to start withholding a quarter of the players' salaries beginning May 15th. Now, the caveat is, that is, if a permanent cancellation of the 2019-20 season or playoff games due to the pandemic happens. Well, don't take my word for it. That is what the NBA said. And they released a statement saying that. Quote, in the event of a permanent cancellation of the 2019/20 regular season or playoff games due to the COVID-19 pandemic, close quote, they will withhold 25% of all players' salaries. Now, the decision was made in conjunction with the Players Association, so this wasn't a unilateral decision with the owners. Governors. You're not the 50 who run the states, United States. Owners own the fact that you own the team. I digress. Rant over. It's basically meant to provide players with a more gradual salary reduction schedule. Like a partial reduction, 25% will begin with the player's twice a month payment due on that date. Now, of course, as we know, the NBA suspended all of their season thus far 5 weeks ago. And people know the date, March 11th, because that was the night that many people say that Rudy Gobert, the center of the Jazz, basically ended the NBA season. But you might as well say he ended all sports altogether because, well, once he became the, I hate to say this, once he became the poster child for the coronavirus pandemic in the athletic realm, the leagues closed down shop fast. And rightfully so, they should, because this is a health issue. And as we know, many players have tested positive for the coronavirus pandemic, and not just in basketball. And not just players, because, well, the owner, governor of the Knicks, James Dolan, also tested positive for the coronavirus pandemic. And people have slick tongues, because I've heard a lot of slander thrown in his direction because he has, well, made a mess of things with Madison Square Garden and all matters Madison Square Garden, which includes the Knicks. Some actually saying that he should have AIDS. Again, rant over. Idiots. So, like I said, the decision that the NBA made to just simply say, well, we're going to suspend the season, it basically was a domino effect that started with them. Because the NCAA canceled their March Madness tournament, which outside of the bowl season in early January, you could probably say the last 2 weeks of December too, but definitely the bowl season early January. The entity probably earns the most money around then. So they shut off their tournament, both the men's and women's. Of course, the NHL shut off their season. College spring sports went, and the Major League Baseball decided to push back their season. Same thing with the golf tournaments. And the NFL, even though they went on as business as usual with their free agency, season, which normally takes place in the middle of March, they had to tweak their upcoming draft, which of course that's going to take place Thursday. It was supposed to be this wonderful Ocean's 11 feel out in Las Vegas, where the draft picks and draft choices would be brought from where they were standing or sitting via boat, because there would be a moat basically in between the stage where Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the NFL, was going to announce the draft picks and where the draftees would be sitting. Well, that picturesque, beautiful setting now will exist somewhere else. I'll talk about that later in this episode. But, at first when I looked at this story, I thought, well, this is not the greatest thing to hear. Players are not going to have as much money at their disposal. But then again, if it's in partnership with the players, which this more or less basically strikes me as a withholding rather than a furlough. And a furlough is basically saying, we have to cut costs so hard that you all can't work a certain time period. That's currently happening with me. So, this isn't a furlough. This is basically what can you say? Like a savings plan, I guess. I think that's the best way you could put it. But once again, this is why I say the NBA probably has the most, I'm trying to find the right word. They probably have the most envied relationship between governorship, ownership, and players that any of the major sports leagues would like to have. It's the best one. It's the most cohesive relationship between union and ownership. Major League Baseball, well, the players basically rule. I hate to say it this way. They basically rule the league. That's why you have the exorbitant salaries, because the labor union is the most powerful in all of professional sports. The NHL is a wreck that's trying to dig itself out of its hole, and they've done a good job thus far, but it's been mighty tough sledding for them. And then you have the NFL, who, well, you have the weakest labor union matched with the strongest power brokers in all of professional sports in the same league. Not a great look. But this here, a partnership again between the ownership and the players and a professional league, is a wonderful thing. And it should tell us all that owners and players can work together and they can come to a decision that is beneficial for all parties involved. It is simple. Air your grievances, be respectful, and then walk away from the table better than you were before. A lot of us can learn from how the NBA conducts their business. And once again, kudos to Adam Silver once again. And that's your topic of the day. Later, we're going to talk about Brady and celebrating an anniversary. And we're, of course, going to talk about Michael Jordan in the list. But coming up next, the wide receiver draft coming up this week, later this week, is this deep as another class that just came and passed us by. Be right back. Classy sports show on the planet, the daily version of it. Cole Sports presents on the daily. Cole Johnson here. And I really had to think long and hard about this when I first saw it and when I first read the story. And the source where it came from. All right, so people have been hyping up the wide receiver draft portion of this year's draft in the NFL since, I would say, probably almost a day after the Super Bowl ended. And look, Texas fan here, anything would make me happy. If this is a deep wide receiver class, fine, bring it on, because we probably could get a good 3-4 years use out of him. And if he could produce, the current general manager, who happens to be the coach of the team, will trade him for peanuts and pennies on the dollar. And rant once again. So this is supposed to be a deep wide receiver draft. And it has been forwarded, seconded, and co-signed by the current Jaguars general manager, Dave Caldwell. Now, why do I side-eye this gentleman? Not necessarily because the Jaguars are a rival to the Texans. I'm not really side-eyeing him for that. I'm side-eyeing him because, well, either he or his unit did a great job in drafting and signing free agents to build that defense. They had some decent offensive weapons as well. Hurts and Robinson come to mind. Of course, they have one now in Fournette in the backfield. But they trusted their offensive weaponry to Blake Bortles. Now, look, I can talk ill about him, but he did do something that, unfortunately, right now, my current quarterback of the Texans, Deshaun Watson, hasn't done yet, which is lead his team to a conference championship. The same goes for Ryan Tannehill, the current quarterback for the Titans. And I really can't say anything horrible about that, except the year after, Bortles just fell off a cliff. And it has been a talent exodus ever since the appearance in the championship game of the American Football Conference for the Jaguars. So that's why I sort of look at anything Dave Caldwell says with a side eye, a slant eye, and a raised eyebrow. But he says that this current wide receiver crop is as vaunted and as deep as the one that it was 6 years ago. Now, if you have to remind yourself as to who was in the 2014 class, all right, the wide receivers that were drafted that year would be Sammy Watkins, who currently plays for the Chiefs, Mike Evans, who plays for the Bucks, Odell Beckham Jr., of course you know him. If you don't, he was playing for the Giants. Now he's currently playing for the Browns. Brandon Cooks, who has been all over the place, now is with the Texans. Kelvin Benjamin, who was with the Panthers. Last I remember, he was with the Bills. All of them that I just mentioned were first-round selections. Now, out of all the ones I mentioned, Kelvin Benjamin has not been all that impressive. Let's be blunt. He's been a massive disappointment. The rest have contributed to some level and some degree. I mean, Sammy Watkins, unfortunately, has been overshadowed by Tyreek Hill. Mike Evans is the number one wide receiver for the Bucks, no question about that. Odell Beckham Jr. basically is a catch highlight reel. Brandon Cooks, he's known for two things: blazing speed and an alarming rate of gathering concussions. And that's not trash talk, that's just fact. So, if this draft class is deep in wide receiver talent like that, well, I'll probably say, okay, well, he might have a point. Caldwell goes on further and he says this, quote, "It's very deep, and I think you will see some that will go undrafted and have really good careers. And you'll see some players in later rounds that will come in and make an immediate impact. definitely top heavy in the first round, and then you have 4 or 5 guys in each round that you will have a good feeling about drafting. Close quote. The 6 receivers that are projected to go in the first round Thursday night will be Justin Jefferson, who is from LSU, Denzel Mims, who's from Baylor, and Arizona State's Brandon Ayuk. You have those 3. Amongst others. So, do I really think that this draft is going to be deep with wide receiver talent that's going to actually produce? Well, the only way you'll know this is if you give them 3 years to actually do something of note. The only reason why we know about these wide receivers that he can put on a name and say, okay, this class was brilliant is because, well, those guys have had, 6 years of tape on them? So, I mean, it just stands to reason that you have to gauge your time and bide your time in thinking that this is actually a good class. Now, I'll say this. I saw a whole ton of LSU games. I live in SEC country, so I had no choice. Justin Jefferson was the man. When back in time. On a beach, well, can't really do that in current moment. Basically now, since we're all stuck in between 4 walls, heels kicked up on the couch or on the lazy boy or in the bed, lounging and thinking about things. One of them being he could get out of the house. But in all sincerity, normally that is the thought process of a retiree. The thought process of Tom Brady, on the other hand, who is not retired, who when the ball is snapped in the regular season will be 43, is thinking about motivation. And what motivation, may I ask, or may you ask? Well, I may answer that question for you. Well, the motivation is the number 199. The motivation was won the Super Bowl. So, yeah, start and time to shine in his second year in the league, not his rookie season. But this is in his brain. But he's long since retired. But we're taking